Good morning and welcome to the Crypto Mining Show, your one-stop shop for all cryptocurrency news from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner. Today, we have a lot to talk about, but I can only fit so much in. And then, of course, we'll have to just bounce right back and get more topics added in because lots is going on within cryptocurrency, from regulation on the government side, globally, as well as what's going on with the economy. Not just locally, but globally and internationally as well. And we are going to focus primarily on coins, though, today because a lot is going on. We have the EIP 37 to discuss for Ergo, which I don't have all of the information for, but we'll kind of discuss what it does. We did do a video on it, kind of the timeline for it and the expectations of it. We also have the Ethereum obsoleteness due to, of course, the fact that we have STETH. And this one's really interesting because basically the concept is because there's money being left on the table if you don't convert your ETH to essentially being staked and then represented by a token, that all ETH will eventually end up being staked and Ethereum itself will no longer be used. That's basically the premise behind it. Pretty interesting stuff. Then we're going to be talking about, more Ergo. And Flux. And then we have more ETH and more ETH stuff. Reversible transactions based on the tokens for Ethereum. And then we'll be talking about a little bit of news over in Australia. I know I have some Australian viewers. Mr. Tech Yes City, who we had guest also on the Ethereum Merge show, is Australian, I believe. So, getting into the bill that is aimed at stable coins is, I think, extremely important. And they are adding in digital yuan regulation. That's something I hadn't even really thought about up to this point, but the digital yuan is probably something you do want to get into, huh? Interpol issues a worldwide arrest warrant for Terra founder Do Kwon, and we have some new coin listings. So let's hop into today's show. Make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. And if you enjoy the show, make sure you hit the share button so that you can share the show out with others. And of course, that helps the channel out in general. Thanks everybody for being here. Let's get into all of it and more right after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Crypto.com. Crypto.com is my go-to centralized exchange for liquidating my crypto assets. With their Crypto.com Visa debit card, I can load up my mined Ethereum to pay for power and other operating costs. In addition to the Visa debit card, there are additional fiat options, including wire transfers, to easily receive your profits. Crypto.com also offers additional services, including trading and even staking, to earn additional revenue on your investments. Join 10 million plus users buying and selling 100 plus cryptocurrencies at true cost by using my affiliate link in the description for a $25 funding bonus. Or enter referral code SOAT at sign up for the same bonus. Remember, cryptocurrency investment comes with significant risks, so do your own research. And welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. First things first, kind of exciting news. We do have a new listing for a small coin on a larger exchange. We have Kaspa being listed here within the next day on MEXC Global. So if you were looking for another exchange for Kaspa, here you got it. And of course, MEXC is quite a bit bigger than the other exchanges Kaspa has been on up to this point. So seeing a listing for Kaspa on a bigger exchange is definitely, a welcome thing that is going to hopefully boost the interest within Kaspa. And then of course, help bolster the cryptocurrency mining farms that are supporting it too as well, because having more ways to liquidate as a cryptocurrency miner is important. As far as Kaspa saving the GPU mining scene, as you guys know, that's probably not going to be the case because inevitably it is optical proof of work, meaning that it will go through all the stages of CPU to GPU to FPGA to ASICs, and then eventually to, of course, mining with lasers, which, how long down the road is that? Probably pretty far, but Let's talk about Interpol issuing a worldwide arrest warrant for Terra founder Do Kwon. Remember, he had tweeted that he's not running. He's not running. It seems like maybe somebody is running. This is an international deal now. Pretty nuts. Regulators worldwide have been seeking the arrest of Terra founder Do Kwon. Several cases have been filed against the executive, allegedly blaming him for the wipe out of Luna and UST, two cryptos belonging to the Terra ecosystem. Now, in what is the latest development, the International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, has issued a red notice against the Terra founder, confirming the same in a Bloomberg report. Quote, prosecutors in Seoul said Monday in a text message, the International Police Organization has issued a red notice for Kwon. Red notices, as such, are issued for wanted fugitives, either for prosecution or to serve a sentence. Per Interpol's website, such a notice serves as a request to law enforcement worldwide to locate and provisionally arrest a person pending extradition, surrender, or similar legal action. Worth recalling here is that Korean officials have allegedly accused Kwon and 5 others of crimes including breaches of capital markets law. In fact, a fortnight back, the prosecutors confirmed that there was circumstantial evidence of escape ever since Kwon left for Singapore, and that is why an arrest warrant was issued in the first place. Kwon had taken social media to proclaim that he was not on the run and asserted that he has shown interest to communicate with government agencies. He also claimed that he and his team were cooperating fully, for they had nothing to hide. However, in response to Kwon's "I am not on the run" or anything similar tweet, South Korean prosecutors said that Do Kwon was obviously on the run and was not cooperating with the investigation. Back then, a Korean prosecution official confirmed that they were currently in the process to locate the whereabouts of suspect Do Kwon and apprehend him. They further added that they will cooperate with local and overseas investigative bodies to get to the bottom of the case. Interpol's newly issued arrest warrant will now help in fostering the same. So this is kind of an interesting position to be in. I always lean towards the idea that nobody is initially intentionally trying to harm other people. And I don't know about Do Kwon in general, but usually I like to think like somehow it just goes down like a terrible path, and then to fix it, they start hiding things and then hiding more things. And it's one little thing, but once you start lying and hiding things, it kind of starts to snowball. And then you get into a position where something obviously like Terra happens or Luna UST happens, everything crashes and you hit all that stuff. So at this point, now you just got to cut and run. That's kind of how I feel like it probably went down for Mr. Do Kwon. I don't feel like Do Kwon was sitting there going like, I'm going to crash the Terra market and destroy people's livelihoods. Like, I don't think that that's like how that went down. But, you know, unfortunately, this is the position that he's in now at this point, and he's got to cut and run, you know. Just get out of town. Get out of Dodge. They'll catch him, though. You can't run from anything these days. So, I don't know. Honesty will keep you above board sometimes, but you never know what you gonna do when they come for you. All right. Australian senator drafts a bill aimed at stablecoin digital yuan regulation. So, for all my Australian viewers, Senator Andrew Bragg on Monday released a draft bill aimed at regulating crypto exchanges, stablecoins, and the digital yuan. Most interesting to me is the digital yuan. Like, the digital yuan's what's gone into place in, you know, China as essentially the central bank digital currency, the yuan, which is a really funny name if you are in the U.S. Probably not funny to them, but funny to me, yuan. Because also, like, I don't know. Anyways, is it the electronic yuan, or does E stand for something different in China? Anyways, that aside, you know, to protect the yuan or the regular yuan, you know, there are the tinfoil hats that are saying they have put the tanks out in front of banks. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Global regulation across, different central bank digital currencies will be the most interesting thing, especially as it pertains to how that is controlled from a sanctions perspective and so on. It was easier for, banks and governments in the past to sort of control the physical movement of any currency between individuals. It would, if given the opportunity, it seems like it would be a lot easier to transfer digital currencies, like central bank digital currencies, between people across, borders and so on. However, that being said, it does seem to me that it's going to be a lot easier to regulate it because, the government controls it, nobody else controls it, right? Or the governments. So it should be interesting to see how essentially every single individual country will start regulating every single other individual country's currency, right? It's like we're in this state now, even with CBDCs, where we have the ability to just basically do away with borders, all get along and transact freely, yet we're just going to set up these individual borders and start wars and a bunch of BS with each other, even though we have the technology to basically do away with it. That's how I see it and feel about it, and I think it's kind of hilarious. It's like at this point, really, because of the digital revolution, we have the ability to transact with each other and not have to deal with this BS, but we're just going to put it into place anyways. Why? Well, because the central banks and the nation states need to still control the population. In a statement on Sunday, Senator Bragg stated that Australia must keep pace with the global race for regulation on digital assets, as it is essential that the Parliament drives law reform on the matter. The new draft bill, titled Digital Assets Market Regulation Bill 2022, calls for the introduction of licenses for digital asset exchanges, digital asset custody services, stablecoin issuers, as well as disclosure requirements for facilitators of the e-yuan in Australia. Speaking to Cointelegraph, Senator Bragg said Australia has quite a risk exposure as an economy, and that's one of the reasons why we need to have a serious program for managing disruption, managing risks that emanate, from the development of a CBDC. And also, obviously with cryptocurrencies and with a stable coin, look, here's the deal. I'm not going to candy coat it for you guys, but Australia is one of the strongest on essentially lockdowns and so on. It would be probably a little bit silly to not assume that there was some impact on the Australian economy due to that. And if we are looking at what stable coins have done for other smaller countries that start to get into an economic position, issue, start having economic issues. There we go. I don't know where we went there. My brain went one way and my mouth went the other way. And, sometimes that happens. But if the countries that have been running into economic issues, the citizens have been able to avoid some of that by putting their money into stable coins, right? And move into stable coins as a way to hedge against, of course, their own economy. And that is probably something that the Australian government is worried about. Well, in fact, from the actual quote, we can say that they actually are, right? Because they are worried about a risk exposure, right? What do they need to do? They need to make sure that the public can't protect themselves from an economic collapse of their own country. And the digital yuan plays into that too, because if we're being completely honest, we are looking at essentially another possibility of a reserve currency at some point with the digital yuan. Now, of course, they are working on something that's under the umbrella of BRICS, BRICS, which is going to establish a second reserve currency to the US dollar with a partnership between Saudi Arabia, Russia, and of course, China. But the digital yuan's not a bad bet either. So if you have a collapsing economy, You could, as an individual, if you were able to easily and legally access the digital yuan or a stable coin, you could potentially protect yourself as an individual from that. And well, frankly, the governments can't have that, right? Senator Bragg said the objective of this particular act is to provide an effective regulatory framework, as well as provide for the reporting of information by certain banks that facilitate the use or availability of digital yuan in Australia, and to provide additional duties for government bodies in relation, for governing bodies in relation to this act and the regulation of activities relating to digital assets and digital yuan. Senator Bragg said that this isn't an accusatory position to take. It's simply just being prepared for gathering information. Yeah, we're not accusing you of anything. We're just preparing, all right? It's like we don't trust you with this, but, we're not saying that you did anything, but we're going to stop you from doing it before you do it. It's really funny. I like that wording. This isn't an accusatory position to take. It's simply just being prepared. The Liberal senator also added that Australia wouldn't benefit from having a CBDC, as privacy issues cannot be managed. However, it is important that the Australian government put something on the table to manage other CBDCs being introduced, as the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia has spoken before, saying there needs to be regulation on stablecoins. The draft bill consultation is open until October 31st, 2022, and welcomes community feedback. Andrew Bragg, a pro-crypto Australian politician, has been an outspoken advocate for cryptocurrency since he was elected senator in 2019. Senator Bragg has been pushing for a clear regulatory framework for digital assets and crypto companies since 2021. In an effort to prevent local startups from moving overseas. Senator Bragg noted that he chaired the Committee for Digital Assets with no fixed view at the time and conducted an inquiry into these matters, as well as informing himself about the risks and opportunities. Meanwhile, the Australian Labor government is said to be working on crypto asset reforms to improve the way Australia's regulatory system manages crypto assets. Last month, the Treasury stated it will prioritize token mapping work in 2022, which will help identify how crypto assets and related services should be regulated. Now, it's kind of funny to me that he is on the ballot as being pro cryptocurrency, but it's really just it's an interesting path to take, that we have the pro cryptocurrency people that are essentially pushing in for regulatory work surrounding it, and then the target here is clearly stable coins, which are, like I said, the best way to prevent or hedge against inflation of, your own country's currency, or the digital yuan, which to me seems like just another way to do that. It's like, let's go ahead and regulate these two things that could protect our citizens on an individual basis from financial ruin in the case, that we have economic issues in the country. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting to the point to where I have too much of a tinfoil hat when I read about regulations surrounding cryptocurrency, but none of it has really gone down the path of basically focusing on the individual's right, other than, of course, I guess, in Texas, we had the Texas Constitution possibility of being modified to not infringing on the rights of an individual to hold or transact with digital currencies. At least there's that. But other than that specific one, which hasn't even gone through, most of the regulations surrounding cryptocurrency are in some form or fashion removing either security or privacy from the individuals than doing anything else. Right. So I'm not a fan of the direction that a majority of the regulations surrounding cryptocurrency has gone. Reversible transactions on Ethereum, ERC20R and ERC2721R. Now, this isn't exactly what everybody, I think, wants to hear. I think when I was seeing people talk about this on Reddit and on Twitter, and I think there was some miscommunications. People read reversible transactions on Ethereum and they're like, oh my God, it's Ethereum, it's the devs reversing transactions. No, while yes, technically Vitalik has said that they could in the case of a bad hack, and we've seen, historically that they have with the DAO, right? This isn't that. This is actually something completely different. What it has to do is with the idea of actually being able to build a token that allows for reversible transactions on top of the blockchain. So I guess you could even say this, I think this is kind of cool. Because it's you don't have to use it, but it's there if you want to use it or need to use it, right? Which is kind of interesting. The play, though, where it gets a little questionable is what it'll be used for, because, of course, the first thing that everybody starts talking about is utilizing it to reverse transactions of, attacks on different bridges. And while I understand that from a financial perspective and protecting the individual, I do feel like this could put Ethereum, specifically the tokens built on top of Ethereum, into a slippery slope situation. The immutability of blockchain transactions is both a blessing and a curse. BAYC phishing, Poly network attack, Harmony bridge compromise, Ronin theft, $14 billion of crypto stolen in 2021 alone. These and so many more are undeniable thefts, but there's no undo button. Example, credit card payment reversals. And not everyone has a jump crypto to bail them out if needed. But what if there was a reversible type of token? This is the question that a few of us at Stanford, Dan Bonin, not Bonin, Bonin, Qinchin Wang, and I have been working to answer over the past few months. We designed opt-in token standards that are siblings to ERC20 and ERC721 and support reversing transactions when there is sufficient evidence to prove or to merit it. Wrote a paper about them and implemented some prototypes. We call these token standards ERC20R and ERC721R respectively. Now, you may be thinking reversible tokens, doesn't that just defeat the purpose of blockchain? Obviously, this is a biased article, to be clear, so this is coming from the people that developed them, but they say no. And here's why. It isn't meant to replace ERC20 tokens or make Ethereum reversible. It simply allows short time windows post-transaction for thefts to be contested and possibly restored. Note that a transaction is only freezable for a short amount of time, say 3 days, before it becomes irreversible. For most of their lifetime, ERC20R funds are irreversible. In an exchange, swapping between two reversible tokens is instantaneous. If a freeze is requested on one side, it would be possible to get funds reversed from the other side, no matter whether the reversible time period has elapsed. However, exchanging a reversible token for a non-reversible token may. So, to protect themselves from reversals, the exchange might finalize the swap only after the reversible time window has elapsed. This would mean that reversible to non-reversible swaps would have delay until the funds are irreversible. Thus, once a couple major tokens become reversible, there is great pressure on other tokens to become reversible as well. Depending on the implementation, it's possible to implement liquid assets for which the reversible time period is passed. For example, liquidate assets you received 3 days ago. In this case, there would not be a delay between your reversible tokens and non-reversible tokens. So what they're saying is basically with adoption, you would end up forcing other tokens if you had a large token. Let's say Ape decides to adopt this, right? Well, Ape token has a bunch of pairs, more pairs than a lot of other. Actually, maybe even a better example of this would be like DAI or a stable coin, right? Why? Well, because it has a bunch of pairings with everything else on the network. And if it was utilizing this standard, basically it would force any of your swaps with any other tokens that are not reversible to wait essentially this 3-day period before it would go through, which would, if on a large enough token, like something like DAI, a stable coin, would influence other tokens to essentially adopt it so that the actual transfer could go through faster. That's how I understand it. So it goes through basically a diagram of how it works. The victim requests the freeze, governance contracts, blah, blah, blah. It comes over to here and it freezes on the ERC20. And I suppose that is essentially it. So it says, suppose an attacker steals funds from a victim. The funds may be further moved to other addresses, such as in figure 1 below. I think that's supposed to be below this. Anyways. The following would happen. Victim requests a freeze on the stolen funds. The victim posts a freeze request to a governance contract, along with the relevant evidence and some stake. The contested transaction must be somewhat recent. There is a fixed reversible time period, 3 days like we read above, I think. Judges accept or deny freeze request. A decentralized quorum of judges vote to freeze the asset or not. This deliberation period should take a day or 2 at most. If they reject the request, the process stops there and the victim loses their stake. If they accept the request, the governance contract will call freeze on the ERC20R contract. Then it would execute the freeze. Now, I'm seeing a couple issues here already. But we'll kind of talk about those in a second. So for NFTs, it simply blocks the NFT from being transferred. For ERC20R, it will trace down the stolen funds and disallow those funds to be transferred. Note that the account owner can still transact with others as long as their balance stays above the frozen amount. This process can become complicated, as I will explain in the next section. But trial. Both sides can then present evidence to the decentralized set of judges. Eventually, the judges reach a decision, at which point they instruct the governance contract to call either the reverse or reject reverse functions on the impacted ERC20R contract. If reject reverse is called, the freeze on the disputed assets is released. The trial may be lengthy, possibly taking several weeks. And if applicable, the reverse function sends the frozen assets back to the victim. When stolen assets rarely simply sit in one place, so the attacker often moves it hot potato style from one account to another. In this case, the attacker could even monitor the mempool and move the assets in a front-running transaction if they see a freeze request incoming. Our solution to avoid this scenario is by conducting the entire freeze and its calculations on-chain in one single transaction so that the attacker can't outrun the freeze. Here's the problem. Eventually this gets gamed, I think. So in order for it to basically be successful, it all has to be carried out on-chain in a single transaction. And then we have like way too many other like smart contract pieces here that are like put into place. Plus, we're talking about trying to interfere with MEV at the end of the day too. I don't know if it actually decreases the amount of vulnerabilities on Ethereum or increases the amount of vulnerabilities on Ethereum. From a quick glance, I feel as if it increases the amount of vulnerabilities on Ethereum as far as getting into more trouble. But let's go ahead and continue. So you can't just disable every account that has touched the assets. So how do we decide what and who to freeze? If it's an NFT, freezing is fortunately pretty simple. Just see who currently owns the NFT and freeze that account. However, the divisible nature of money makes freezing from ERC20s much more complicated. The funds could be split among dozens of accounts, thrown into an anonymity mixer like Tornado, or exchanged into another digital currency. If it goes through many accounts, at least some of those will be tied to the hacker, but some may very well be innocent or merchants who provided a legit service in return for payment. It is possible to always correctly, it is impossible to always correctly discern the guiltiness of each account. Thus, we have provided a default freezing process for tracking and locking stolen funds. And it assures that assuming no burns, enough assets will be frozen to cover the theft amount. That's another problem, the burn, right? So in all of these transactions, like a ton of it's getting burned back and forth due to EIP 1559, which is kind of hilarious. So even to like provide it back, you do end up in a position where you're just burning a portion of the ETH. Plus the fees that you're paying to the validators, you also have to worry about. So it should say, assuming no burns, and of course accounting for the fees of the transaction. An account's funds will be only be frozen if there's a direct flow of transactions from the theft and the algorithm runs in reasonable runtime complexity with respect to the transaction graph. And then you have a judiciary system. So the more ambiguous piece of this puzzle concerns the decentralized quorum of judges. Who are these judges and how do they vote? How do they get rewarded? These logistics are ultimately up to the governance, aka whoever creates the instance of the ERC20R or 21R, 721R. In our paper, we explore how to discourage the judge dishonest and bribery, reward mechanisms, and more. So we stress that judges cannot add transactions or arbitrarily modify the values of one's balance. And this is where, you know, I talked about earlier, you're adding in more issues. So this is at the token level. So if ApeCoin decides to implement this on their token, you're in a position where ApeCoin decides it with their governance on how this will actually be governed, right? And only in the case that the funds of your ApeCoin funds are stolen. So if you're going through like a bridge and you're bridging to essentially something that doesn't support it, not necessarily that, but then that's why you have the 3-day lockup, which means that you have, from a UX perspective, just a nightmare of swapping between 20R and ERC20 contracts back and forth. And then you have to go, and now what? Like, now that that's implemented, you need to go research every single token on the Ethereum blockchain and figure out how their governance works for this essentially this specific contract, like the ERC20R stuff. And if it's fair and balanced and blah, 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 and every token individually can change, like, it just sounds like an absolute nightmare to research and figure out if I should even be utilizing any token that's utilizing it, right? Like I gotta go, like, I don't know. It seems extremely stressful to me. I feel like it's just adding a ton more, but it's an interesting concept at the end of the day to add reversible transactions onto the blockchain. If we were going to talk about reversing transactions, where do you want to put it? On, like, you know, not on the layer 1 chain. So I guess, well, I don't know. I guess it is on the layer 1 chain. So I'd rather maybe see this separated out, maybe as a processing system, a transaction processing system. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this in general. I did want to primarily cover it because, like I said, it was being misinterpreted, right? Essentially, at the end of the day, what I was noticing is people were saying, oh no, like, you can reverse transactions on Ethereum. I'm like, first of all, no, you can't yet. Second of all, that's not exactly what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is basically reversible transactions of a token, and specifically that token would have to be developed for. So it's not all doom and gloom, to be completely clear. In fact, like, it's the opposite of that. I just think, like, at the end of the day, if I'm looking at the ERC20R, I think that it does create more attack vectors. And because of the governance being put into the hands of each individual token, I think that it adds for, like, basically a whole other set of nightmares involved in governance. But that's it. That's about all there is. It's like when you are constantly improving technology in general, yes, like, there's going to be more complications added onto it. So I understand that point of view. It's just like when I read it, I'm like, oh man, this sounds rough. But that's not it. Post-merge, ETH has become obsolete. Once again, this article and how it's being interpreted on Twitter and in Reddit and in chat apps and on Discord and in Rocket Chat and everywhere is wrong. Okay. So, but we're not saying that Ethereum as a whole here has become obsolete. What we're specifically talking about here is the Ethereum token, or the ETH token, has become obsolete. And the reasoning behind this is actually pretty simple. What you have is you have staked Ethereum, and then you have all the Ethereum that's not staked, right? Well, the only thing that is generating revenue is the staked Ethereum. So if you have a bit of Ethereum, you know, on the Ethereum blockchain, or a bit of ETH, you're actually just wasting your money. So most people are taking that and swapping it for something like ST, ETH, etc. So because of the way all of it functions, the idea here is that ETH itself only becomes this, basically this transactional currency that's always used to swap for ST ETH at the end of the day, or to be used to pay for a few fees. But by and large, the ETH token itself will all become locked up in staked contracts, and you will never see it being utilized as you've seen it being utilized in the past. Now, we've talked about this before too, as a little bit different than when you're talking about mining versus staking. This obviously becomes a problem, right? Because if you're mining, then you not only are you basically transacting all the time to get that ETH in and out and like utilize it, but previously when you were mining, you were minting new Ethereum. So new Ethereum was coming into the ecosystem. With staking as it sits right now with Ethereum, no new ETH is coming into the ecosystem. It is only being burned out of the ecosystem. So at this point, you have two huge funnels basically sucking up all the Ethereum. You have the staking contracts, and you have the EIP 1559 burn. So essentially, all the ETH at the end of the day right now is just incentivized to, well, on the burn, not incentivized, but outside of the burn is being incentivized to just be removed out of the ecosystem. Staked ETH is more capital efficient and more profitable than regular ETH, and platforms that offer liquid staking derivatives are bolstering its popularity. For years, various blockchain projects were rumored to be the future, or be future Ethereum killers, projects that would unseat Ether from its throne and usurp its title as the top digital asset. That day seems to have come, though it appears it was an inside job. Lido staked Ethereum, ST ETH, and other liquid staking derivatives are primed to render ETH as an asset obsolete. The transition from proof of work to proof of stake allows everyday decentralized finance users to benefit from the rewards previously reserved for miners simply by holding ST ETH or any other ETH liquid staking derivative. This has given way to a wave of interest across the industry, from individuals to institutions across centralized finance and DeFi. In the past months, the ETH liquid staking derivatives have received a ton of attention, and titans of the industry, including Coinbase and Frax, have released ETH liquid staking derivatives. Liquid staking derivatives offer all the benefits of regular ETH while also being yield-generating assets. Here's an interesting point I'm going to bring up. Here is the one benefit that liquid staking derivatives don't have compared to ETH, and that is paying for transactions. At the end of the day, you always have to have a little bit of ETH in your wallet to pay for transactions, which actually brings up a pretty funny problem that could end up rearing its head and making your actual ETH worth way more than any liquid staked derivative. And that's that people are going to need your ETH just to transact with their tokens, which is freaking hilarious to me. But in addition to that we should bring up is that Ergo does technically have a proposal to solve this problem on their blockchain, where they will allow you, it will basically enable people to swap with paying for fees in tokens. However, that is also using an underlying liquidity pool of Ergo. So really, at the end of the day, I suppose you still are having that Ergo paid out, and the person that's actually making money off of that transaction is the person that still holds the Ergo. So at the end of the day, though, it does bring up this kind of like funny situation where you could end up driving the price of non-liquid staked derivatives or raising the price of, non-liquid staked derivatives Ethereum, right? So you're just straight up ETH. And I think that could be a really funny problem when it rears its head. So anyways, the article's argument's a little bit different. It says that means holders are able to gain exposure to ETH's price action and maintain liquidity while harnessing staking benefits. While it's holding STETH, we'll see their holdings gradually increase as staking yields are regularly added into the sum. While most staking strategies require locking up funds in a validator, liquid staking derivatives allow users to maintain liquidity while still benefiting from the staking yield. ETH locked up in staking validators isn't available for withdrawal until an ambiguous time in the future, likely with the Shanghai update. And that is, just to be clear, like the Shanghai update is stated on ethereum.org. It is stated by Tim Biko on his GitHub. But from what I understand from Mr. Tom and some other core devs, the core devs are definitely arguing pretty heavy surrounding the Shanghai update. And it's important to note that from the perspective, at least from my perspective of what happens when withdrawals get unlocked on Ethereum, it's probably best that withdrawals are basically never unlocked. Otherwise, the whole entire token could essentially collapse, in my humble opinion. So, there's probably some of the devs, half the dev team that's like, if we unlock this, like, this shit could collapse on us, bro. And then there's the other half that's like, but we said we're going to do it, so we're going to do it, and it's going to work fine. And I just kind of wonder how these arguments are going back and forth. So simply put, ETH liquid staking tokens are just more capital efficient than standard ETH or more traditional staking practices. From a user perspective, there's little reason to hold regular ETH, where the only potential upside would be an increase in price when they could hold a liquid staking derivative that would boost their prospective profits via stake yielding. Here's the other thing, though, that we need to bring up. We are in a position where proof of stake is basically influencing everybody to completely centralize the holdings of Ethereum. So ETH, the actual token that is actually powering the Ethereum blockchain, right? Because that's what you need to transact, etc. All that is all getting consolidated into basically the same place because none of the users want to have an illiquid asset, right? So you end up in this position where obviously, like we've seen, we have, a growing percentage, a very scary growing percentage of validation being done on AWS. This is, like we've seen, giving, whether valid or not, the SEC the idea that the US government has jurisdiction over Ethereum now, and it's only becoming more and more centralized because essentially you are, as a user, incentivized to take your ETH, give it to another company so that you get a liquid asset, a liquid staked asset in return, and then you earn some extra coin. But as we've seen, this never works out in cryptocurrency. Because you know what the fact of the matter is? The fact of the matter is we've seen this before, right? In a centralized manner, sure, yes, but we've seen this before. What happens if you give a centralized entity a bunch of your freaking money? Well, Celsius happens. So if you are consistently centralizing the entire currency and then giving that centralized entity all of your ETH, eventually what happens? Just at a much grander scale. From a user perspective, there's little reason to hold the regular ETH. Like we said, project founders have adopted similar mentality from DeFi to non-fungible token projects. Teams across Web3 have integrated ST-ETH into their protocols, with behemoths such as Curve and Aave making it even easier for DeFi users to integrate ST-ETH into their investment strategies. As you can see here, Lido Finance itself holds 31% of the total locked ETH, with Coinbase having 15%. Luckily, there's 23% unlabeled, which is a little bit helpful. But how long before that unlabeled gets consolidated into Coinbase, Kraken, Lido, and Binance, right? For lending protocols, ST-ETH offers the ability to increase yield collateral without having to make risky investment decisions to keep users satisfied. NFT projects are able to establish a source of revenue through their mint proceeds rather than being left with a finite lump sum, and by making it easier for Web3 projects to stay afloat and keep their community happy. ETH liquid staking derivatives free up project leaders to move beyond money worries and shepherd true innovation. At least that's the argument. Beyond being far more capital efficient, ETH liquid staking derivatives help in maintaining the Ethereum network. ST-ETH and other derivatives represent Ether, which has been deposited into an Ethereum validator to help provide network security. The centralization of the staked ETH has been a major criticism of the proof-of-stake consensus model, with Lido accounting for more than 80% of the market share of liquid staking derivatives while controlling over 30% of the staked ETH. Now, he goes on to say that, however, the recent proliferation of alternatives is poised to quell such worries as the market share becomes spread between various organizations. It's like this, though. And we kind of see it, with, I would equate it to, this is actually very, very perfect, and maybe you're going to disagree with it. But I would compare essentially Ethereum moving to proof of stake to the lockdowns from, of course, the recent events, medical worries, etc. Why is that? Well, it's because the lockdowns essentially consolidated a majority of the wealth into a few companies. And that's what you're doing. Sure, it's decentralized across Amazon, Microsoft, Google, whatever. But all the little guys are gone. The individual validators are done. The small business owners are done. And if this happens with Ethereum as a cryptocurrency, where in my humble opinion, essentially you're supposed to have the complete opposite of that from a principled standpoint, essentially all Ethereum becomes is a corporate lackey that will just need to have, obviously, because of the potential issues with the U.S. government having jurisdiction over it, have lobbyists in the government just like all the big corporations do, which they already do, right? Coinbase already has these people working for them. Binance already has them. I'm sure Lido does as well. So you end up, basically, Ethereum is just a corporate run blockchain. At the end of the day, the structure is that itself. And this is why the other day I had this kind of like this tweet where I was talking about like company integrations and, should a company own a blockchain, that sort of stuff. But where it gets really, really interesting with ETH is it's all roundabout, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, the blockchain itself isn't a company, right? Ethereum itself, but all of the consensus, all of the transactions are essentially run by individual companies. And they're too big to fail, and they push out the little guy, and there's no actual solving of what we've seen with traditional finance. It just goes all back to that. It all basically goes back around. As the benefits of staking continue to be covered in the press, liquid staking derivatives are sure to become a central part of even the simplest DeFi strategies. Coinbase providing CB-ETH means that even retail investors will be familiar with the strategy. We're likely to see a steep upshoot in protocols accepting liquid staking derivatives as users begin to flock to essentially free yield. Soon, many DeFi users may only hold ETH to cover their gas fees. And that's what we were talking about earlier. And I think that is where some opportunity is from a holding perspective. If your entire like if your entire investment is tied up in essentially something that doesn't allow you to transact, then, and for you to transact, you need access to, the ETH token to basically cover the gas fees. You're probably going to be more likely to pay more for the Ethereum that covers your gas fees than you are for the staked representation of the Ethereum. So then you always end up, I think, at the end of the day with the imbalance between liquid stake derivatives and ETH itself being off, with ETH itself actually being worth more because the actual utility of the token is worth a lot more than the utility of the staked Ethereum token. So I understand what the article is saying, right? Where it's saying essentially it's dumb. It would be silly of you not to convert all of your Ethereum into a liquid stake derivative because you want to earn that passive income off of it. But at the end of the day, are you earning enough passive income off of it to account for the disparity between price of the liquid derivative and the actual token itself? And I would posture the answer to that will be no. Because everybody will need the unstaked ETH, but everybody will have staked their ETH. Meaning that your unstaked ETH will be worth worlds more than your staked ETH derivative or liquid staked derivative. Eventually. Because right now what it is, as this article points out, is that everybody is greedy, so everybody wants to actually earn the money off of it, so they're going to dump all of their Ethereum into it. Then they're going to have no Ethereum for fees, and then bing, bang, bada, boom, your Ethereum that allows them to actually transact on the network because they were too stupid to realize they needed it is worth a lot more than their derivative is. Done. Hopefully that makes sense. The long foretold ETH killer appears to have finally emerged, though it looks like it will only boost Ethereum security in its supporters' bags. All right. Let's get into the big topic of today, I suppose. The elephant, let me check the time. The elephant in the room as it sits. Ergo. We do have to talk about this. If you guys remember, there is a partnership between Flux and Ergo. And essentially, this has been paused in the interim because of the issues on the Ergo platform. So in a tweet from Flux, it says, we will not be enabling the enabling swap of Flux Erg until the difficulty issues on the Ergo platform are resolved. They are working hard now to fix the issue. Just be understanding and wait. They will have to get back on track with the difficulty adjustment. No ETA for release. And here's the deal, because there seems to be two camps. There seems to be two camps going on right now in Ergo. There seems to be the camp that acknowledges that there was an issue, that there has been an issue for a long time, and that the issue needs to be resolved. And then there's the camp that basically is acting like there's no issue and you're some evil dude for pointing out the issue. And obviously I'm of the former, not the latter. But look, the thing is the people that are pointing out the issue and trying to get this resolved actually are the ones that want Ergo to survive. If you're just sitting there acting like everything's honky-dory and functioning perfectly when it's not, you're not helping, right? Like, this is like, if you raised a kid that way, your kid's going to be a wreck. That's all I got to say. Look, Ergo is in a position that is not good for the platform. We brought this up. We are trying to basically, let Ergo know that this needed to be resolved, and it was ignored. So there is a huge portion of the population, that former portion of the population, that's frustrated that this was brought up, multiple times in the past, and it was ignored. And we could say, okay, this is a black swan event, right? The argument is this is a black swan event. It'll never happen again. Because of the merge for Ethereum. However, the argument never was that this would be an ongoing issue. The initial argument on the 10th of September was that because of the current implementation of how the difficulty adjustment works on Ergo that it would be detrimental to the network post-merge. That was the argument. So don't put words into people's mouth. They were literally arguing that the problem was the merge and the way that the Ergo difficulty adjustment would handle it. That was the argument. Now, the continuation of this is, will it continue or will it not continue, and do we need to fix it? I think initially it sounded like nobody wanted to fix it, and now we have fixes coming in and being implemented with EIP 37, which I covered in an individual video, and I highly recommend you checking it out. Timing on this in particular, and we'll talk about this a little bit too, but timing on this in particular could be, a couple weeks out still, because we have governance to deal with. Now, my understanding is there is technically potential for a dev-initiated hard fork if needed. However, Ergo prides itself on governance by miners, which I fully support and back, right? So they are going to prefer to go through the voting process. I do not know what process will be going on right now. I've reached out to the team to get more detail on this, and hopefully we'll have a video out for you later today. Okay. So, I think that what we end up with here in the near future is about a week to 2 week timeline. My fear, though, is that we lose too much on the network within that time. I'm really not sure right now. And I'm still actually mining it. I did tweet that I was going to jump off of the network after the next epoch. But the problem is the epoch happened, and there was still some difficulty. So the difficulty was still high at around 15 to 16. Now we're waiting on the next one to go through. So you can see here on the tracker, the current block height, the current difficulty at 16p, and then the time to find is very long still. So the next epoch is not until October 2nd at 9 p.m. And then the problem here was, of course, that as soon as that happened, essentially the hash rate fell back off, right? So I think right after we made our video and we were kind of going through it, the hash rate had gone back up, and then right after the epoch shift, the hash rate went back down. Problem being, of course, is that essentially the amount of the hash rate that came off of the network compared to the amount of difficulty it came down means that the next epoch is just extended out that much further, and the difficulty is not low enough for anybody to be profitable, which means that you sacrifice block times and then you sacrifice security. And the exponential issue that could happen here that, of course, that I've talked about before that we're worried about is that because it's unprofitable and so on, you start to see more hash rate drop off, and then it is extended out further. Of course, the EIP 37 is supposed to solve this, and that is kind of where we're at. So we're going to track the situation as it sits. But this is, look, my frustration is here. People are saying this is not an issue, but it's clearly a big issue. Why is this an issue? Like, if Flux is pausing swaps and I can't get anything done on the blockchain because block times are so long, the chain is broken. The frustration from the people that were bringing up the issue is not like out of like some sort of like spite against Ergo in general. The frustration is that when it's brought up, it's ignored and you're treated stupid. That's the problem, right? And it's like basically being gaslit by the entire Ergo community, and that is very frustrating, right? Because people are acting like the people are like bringing up the issue somehow is a negative towards Ergo, and you shouldn't talk about it. Like, we don't talk about Bruno, but if we want to fix the problem, we have to talk about it. And like, that's where my frustration comes in. Now, as far as the Flux thing, I think this isn't as big of a deal as people may initially feel like it is. Okay. This part, I don't think is as big of a deal. Why is that? Well, the Fun Vampire has said, curious what was the deciding factors on this pause. I replied, I don't have confirmation yet, but you know, I said a hard fork on Ergo would mean doing the work all over again for Flux. So the reason Flux is going to pause here is because the proposal for EIP 37, as it currently sits, is going to require a hard fork per, of course, the EIP. And if you have a hard fork, then that is going to essentially change or make basically Flux have to go through all the work again of redeploying and enabling the swaps. So why not just pump the brakes, wait for the hard fork to happen, and then do all the work? Otherwise, you're just doing all the work twice, and you're doing all the work twice within a short amount of time. It doesn't really make much sense. So not as big of a deal there, in my humble opinion, as maybe I think some people initially anticipated or thought it was, right? So that's kind of where that's at. Now, as far as my mining profitability goes, we have to run the ad. So let's get going, and let's make sure that we continue to try to, I think, support Ergo. Look, I think I'm like a couple hundred deep into power on the Ergo network. But I mean, we did get some data. We'll talk about it here in a second. I actually don't, and maybe you guys can help me here. Here's the thing I don't understand. Well, there's a couple parts to this that don't make sense to me logically, real quick. So, and maybe you guys can help me with this. Well, there's two. The obvious one is, if we're going to hard fork, why am I trying to speed up the epoch as requested by the Ergo team, right? So they say, let's support Ergo, let's throw a bunch of hash rate on there, but also let's hard fork. You don't need a ton of hash rate on Ergo to implement the hard fork. So why are we doing that? That part doesn't, like, we're trying to fix the network, but if we're going to have a hard fork anyways, why would you waste the money or the time? So there's that. Secondary to that, and here's the other part I don't get. If I understand the way the difficulty works, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, increasing the amount of the hash rate on the network is just going to increase the difficulty, or the average difficulty drop down over the past 2 weeks. Which means if you are speeding up the epoch by increasing the hash rate to 50 to 100 terahash, or in this case, right, at 16p, we would want to be around the 100 terahash, 100, somewhere around there. Anyways, if we want to get back up to 2-minute block times, but then we average that out over the past 2 weeks, and we're just going to have a difficulty adjustment that goes down a little bit. So because of the way the network functions, adding hash rate onto the network isn't necessarily a solution either. So then, like, from my perspective, adding the hash rate on to support the network was a show of good faith. However, if I look at it logically, I don't think it makes any sense for those two reasons. Two separate reasons, clearly. Because I could say, for the hard fork reason, well, they might not actual hard fork because it wouldn't pass governance. And then I say, okay, well, that makes sense. So I'm not sure, like, I think there's maybe I'm wrong, like, I would have probably liked to see, like, because if I'm thinking about the problem and how I would approach it personally, I would probably have done out the calculations of, like, if we can hit this hash rate, we would want to stop here because it would mean that our difficulty would come down by this much over this amount of time, or how much theoretical would make it profitable, and how much hash rate could Ergo actually sustain and actually pay for power for miners based on an average cost of whatever. Okay, there we go. How about we say we up the amount of hash rate of the network to 50 terahash? And at that point, it would speed up the network by this much. We would hit the next epoch here, and the difficulty would hit here, which means at this point, then miners would be profitable, and so on. But then, of course, the problem is how much hash rate is turned off versus that would come back onto the network and cause the problem again versus how much of that hash rate has been sold out or liquidated. Because if we looked at all of the networks, and we talked about this before, and you look at like mining pool profits, there's like there's like 400 terahash now, or originally it was like 300 terahash of ETH hash rate. So double that on Ergo, right? So 800 basically available that could come onto Ergo. That's been shut off and has not been seen again, right? As far as directly on Ergo, there's specifically to the max with 250 as confirmed by the devs. The spike that was on 2 miners up to 400 was irrelevant, not accurate from my understanding. So 250 terahash down to like the 2. So there's 225 terahash specifically over the past couple weeks that has come off of Ergo itself that we don't know what happened to, right? So the question is, how much of that gets turned back on if or when, right, Ergo becomes profitable again, and how much does that impact the network? These are all the questions that I have, and maybe you guys can help me out. I would like to sit down with Arminio or somebody from the Ergo team once they're through this, almost like kind of I know that they're really busy right now. Arminio said they're really busy. They got their head down. I got some questions answered for the video covering EIP 37, so that was very nice. Thank you, Arminio, for answering those so that I make sure that we're correct. Another correction to that video that I need to make is a cold start doesn't mean from zero, so there would be obviously some difficulty already implemented in on the hard fork. But now that that's corrected too, as far as like these questions go, I'd like to sit down and like look back at this and try to figure out exactly, you know, what all of that, or how all of that would function or play out. But these are the questions that I have specifically. And I don't have the answer to them either, right? I'm good at asking questions. I'm not good at solving it because, you know, I don't have enough experience to necessarily solve it. You know, hopefully what I do is eventually learn more about how all of this functions. Let's go ahead and run the ad and then talk about profitability. Today's sponsor is Crypto.com. Crypto.com is my go-to centralized exchange for liquidating my crypto assets. With their Crypto.com Visa debit card, I can load up my mined Ethereum to pay for power and other operating costs. In addition to the Visa debit card, there are additional fiat options, including wire transfers, to easily receive your profits. Crypto.com also offers additional services, including trading and even staking, to earn additional revenue on your investments. Join 10 million plus users buying and selling 100 plus cryptocurrencies at true cost by using my affiliate link in the description for a $25 funding bonus. Or enter referral code SOAT at sign up for the same bonus. Remember, cryptocurrency investment comes with significant risks, so do your own research. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Now, part of the fun, of course, is that I do have a bunch of Neta Angels. And luckily, you know, once the difficulty dropped, Ergo or GetBlock did find a block, so it's in unconfirmed balance, okay, but yay, GetBlock found a block, which is awesome because GetBlock had not found the block in a very, very, very long time, very, very, very long time. So it's good to see that they found the block. Remember, you know, Ergo's offering now up to like 50% additional, plus of course, if you have the Neta Angels and you're mining to the Neta Smart Pool, which I've covered how to do on this channel, you get another 9% on top of that. So, you know, the 50% an additional reward plus the 9% after you've added that 50%. Anyways, the total number is actually a little bit different. Math is hard. Anyways, I can't do it off the top of my head right now is what I'm saying. But you get those additional rewards, which is really cool. So, you know, I think GetBlock's definitely trying to help out here. It's still not like it's still not going to be, you know, enough to pay for power necessarily or anything like that. So, you know, don't get excited. But that, like if you're in a position where you're trying to pay for power, be aware that that's not going to, it's not making it profitable. If that makes sense. And then let me go get the current price for Neta for you guys. If my wallet was connected. So $7.46 of Neta is what we've made this week mining. Oh. Let's check what to mine for an RTX 3090 when it looks like, yeah, so I'd clear it out. So we need to correct ZIL hash, Kapow, ProgPow, Firo. All right. And that's at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Kaspa in first, losing 26 cents a day. Cero in second, losing 25 cents a day. Xano in third, losing 29 cents a day. Neoxa in fourth, losing 30 cents a day. Technically, Flux should be in like second or first. No, first at losing 22 cents a day. It's just, yeah, anyways. Ravencoin losing 33 cents a day at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. I think you guys scroll down a bit for Ethereum Classic losing 42 cents a day after power. And they do have ETH work or ETH proof of work in here losing 44 cents a day after power. So there you go as far as what to mine says. There are options out there to be profitable right now. So make sure you're paying attention to them. We discussed some of them here on the channel last week. Obviously, I've also discussed them over on sonofitech.locals.com. And profit and revenue and generating that right now within GPU mining and mining in general, but primarily GPU mining is very difficult. You are in a position where, it is a day-to-day thing because you are pretty much needing to be in a position where you are either completely spec mining things that have no price set to them at all, and then kind of in hopes that they get listed at a price that makes you profitable, or coins that aren't listed on what to mine or necessarily larger exchanges. So you have to do the calculations yourself and do the work. Those are kind of where you can make what I would call like the steady money or the guaranteed, because then you actually have you have a marketplace for it. But it's also at such a small level that if you are running a larger operation, it might not be viable, right? Like if you were to look at something like Radiant, which we talked about previously before, and you look at the liquidity on like an exchange, it is very low, where like it may look like, okay, I can sell Radiant at, a tenth of a penny here, when in reality, yes, you could maybe do that, but maybe it's only for like $200 worth, which is, on a larger farm, maybe like one day of mining Radiant for you, right? And then boom, you've liquidated the entire exchange, or the entire price of that, of Radiant in that exchange for that time. Because you've sold all of that, and then you've driven the price down. And so then if another miner hops into that and they're trying to liquidate too, well, then you end up liquidating the entire damn exchange, and the price is driven down into the dirt because of the selling pressure. So, while there is potential across all cryptocurrency markets right now to basically be profitable, maybe for a day here and a day there and whatnot, for everybody to be profitable, the answer to that question is no. In addition to that, right, you need to be very, very cautious about how you handle it. Because essentially everything is very, very volatile right now within the GPU mining scene. So I hope that makes a lot of sense to y'all, so you understand exactly how that's functioning, There's not enough liquidity for everybody to be profitable all the time. And that's just going to be the nature of the beast, I think, for the next like 6 months, potentially longer. And you are going to have to make sure that you are kind of paying attention. I personally, like I said, there's the ones that have the market that could give you a little bit better of a, I guess, like guarantee of making money for that day, something like Radiant, right? But I think that at the end of the day, if you're going to mine anything, like from my perspective, not financial advice, but what I am going to do is play with test nets and complete spec mineable coins that do not have any market whatsoever. Because here's the deal behind that. A, I can talk about it, and there will be no incentive for a portion of you all to go hop onto it, because the fact of the matter is you do not know if it's going to be successful or not, right? So it allows me to talk about it on the channel without hitting some market and destroying its liquidity on an exchange, right? I can do that. In addition to that, it allows for me to make more interesting content, I think, too, because we're playing around with new coins and nodes and so on. So I think that that's beneficial for the channel. It's a little fun, and it's building communities, right? Like, for example, like when we were doing Kaspa and you got Brad and Chad, there you go, working on like stratums together and building. Like we have people in the community that are building right now during the bear market. That sort of stuff is good to encourage. We have people that have been building up their skills. I know a lot of y'all are learning like Linux command line now. That sort of thing. Seeing that's what I want, the evolution of the GPU miner, I think, into basically learning to build, learning more about these networks, that sort of thing. That's kind of the focus here until we really get into a position where we can start adding hash rate back onto the networks and not completely blowing them up, right? So there you go. That's kind of my thoughts surrounding it as far as that's concerned. Let's go ahead and talk about the hash rates on mining pool stats. Let's take a look at Bitcoin for the week. It's up 1.72% and at 250 exahash a second. That tells me that this winter summer cycle, that's what we've been expecting, but then September ended up being stupid hot for some reason, and the hash rate came back down. Remember, it was almost like everybody planned for September to be colder, and they turned on all their equipment, and then all of a sudden, we're seeing record highs in like literally every single location within the United States in September. And it's too hot and everybody shut back off again. Remember, we saw that spike a few weeks ago, I think like at the beginning of September. It was almost as if people were anticipating the temperature to come down and it didn't. And then clearly the farms couldn't handle it because it was getting too hot. It looks now to me as if that's kind of happening again. Maybe we're getting to September 24th here. We're starting to see the temperatures come down, more hash rates being able to come back online. Of course, we've talked about these miners kind of consolidating a lot too, meaning like basically more hash rates able to come online because the hash rate that wasn't available because the companies were failing or so on is being bought out by other companies. That's part of it too. But this is coming back. So I think that's good to go. Let's take a look at, Ethereum Classic, which is kind of the go-to right now. We have all the Ethereum forks here listed for us, but Ethereum Classic continues to lose hash rate off of the network. I think last week when we were doing this, we were at like 180, somewhere around there. We dropped another 14 terahash. I think we'll continue to see Ethereum Classic lose hash rate. I think we'll continue to see a majority of these chains continue to lose hash rate. Why? Well, it's a bear market, and in addition to that, we didn't see any price discovery yet. Now, I get it. Look, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of hopium here, right? Because you have a whole bunch of people coming out being like, see, we were right. Miners don't influence the price. There's been no price discovery on any of these coins. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think the price discovery comes until we actually have the miners starting to need to sell a little bit later on. So I think that you have to let the whole market kind of figure itself out, right? If you have a huge influx of hash rate onto a network that it can't operate at right off the bat, I don't think you're going to be able to just magically find like 1,000% price discovery to support it. I think that's going to take time to shake out. I think that price discovery comes in 6 months to a year. And then I think the real price discovery comes in 2025. So yes, sit back, relax, buckle up for a bumpy ride, because I'm still sticking to the plan of a bear market lasting until 2025. I don't see any sign of that being any different or changing at all based off of what I'm looking at right now. Ethereum proof of work is up 88% on that pamp. It was pamping hard, boys, because Mr. Chandler Go is pamping it, pushing that shit, and it did go up to 53 terahash a second with that big old pump, my friends. People are asking me what I think about it. I don't really know. I guess I think as far as the price discovery goes, it was clear that the price went up due to its adoption into the crypto.com sphere. And then also there does seem to be some building going on surrounding NFTs, as we've seen once again with the crypto.com integrations. And then, of course, I think there is a little bit of worry surrounding Ethereum, for the reasons that we talked about multiple times last week and this week, running up into this week, just starting today. But we have this awkward position of basically the ETH token itself being incentivized to be completely pulled out of the market into essentially centralized corporations that are staking it for other people, such as Lido and Coinbase, etc., on centralized hardware that the SEC is using to claim jurisdiction over all the transactions on. So clearly there's a little bit of issues going on with Ethereum post-merge, okay? Is that the direct relation for proof of work pumping? No, probably not. Maybe a little bit here. Like I said, the biggest influence is the big listings on like crypto.com. And remember, now we kind of have this weird forky fork going on where Ethereum Fair has a portion of it, and Ethereum Fair is Justin Sun's, and it got a big pamping of 101%, to $2.29. And this is Justin Sun's one, I believe, on Polynex or whatever. Or maybe I get them all mixed up. Anyways, it doesn't look... Yeah, there it is. There it is right there. Polynex, MEXC, gate.io, blah, blah, blah. So, there you go. Let's take a look at the rest of these networks. We'll look at the classic Raven coin, down 11% over the past 7 days, and the hash rate is down as well. A little bit of a pump up today, actually. It had gotten down to about 17, still sitting around 18 terahash, and they kind of pumped up almost close to 19 terahash today. Of course, some of this does appear to be some API issues because we have our pool hash rate reporting higher than our network hash rate, which tells me it's not quite accurate, but I'm sure it'll shake out. Let's take a look at Flux. We were looking at like 8 mega solutions. It has dropped a little bit, maybe half a mega solution here. Looks like we got 7.43 mega solutions a second. It is technically right now the most profitable coin to mine, or at least the least losing money coin to mine, according to what to mine right now, at 10 cents a kilowatt hour on a 3090, only losing 22 cents a day. So there you go. It's down 10% over the past 7 days though, and the hash rate is down. So there you go. Let's go ahead and take a look at the fun one, Mr. Ergo. And we kind of we beat this horse to death as far as looking at it today. Just an overview though, we are seeing this hash rate drop lower. We really needed to kind of recover and stay recovered, I think, in my humble opinion. But like I said, when I posed the questions, I don't really understand the point of pushing up the hash rate, speed up the epochs, if that's going to adjust the difficulty to remain higher for longer. It doesn't make much sense to me, so I need someone to help me out with that thought process. And then I think we're a couple weeks out from the EIP possibly going through, and that'll be governance based on the miners. So we'll have that to kind of walk through. It's down 16% over the past 7 days, and it's at 26.6 terahash a second. And let's go ahead and take a look at the Kaspa. Rocking the Kaspa. Up 1%, 0.4 of a penny over the past 7 days. Of course, we do have possibly some pamping coming in over here in 22 hours due to the MEXC global listing. We'll just have to see how that shakes out, though, and we'll find out tomorrow, of course. We had a huge dip off of hash rate, and then it came back up to about 196 terahash a second. Funny enough, that looks like exactly what the Ergo hash rate was doing. So it looks like some of y'all were mining that Kaspa, rocking the Kaspa, and then got word that we needed help over on Ergo and moved off. Is that what I'm seeing here, good sir? Well, thank you guys for helping out with Ergo. And I guess welcome back to the Kaspa chain. And if we take a look at Radiant, it pretty much built up its hash rate, since we talked about it. And then it's sitting pretty steady at 65 terahash a second. It had a huge pamping. I'm just going to say pamping now. We're going to use all the crypto Twitter stuff. And I laugh a little bit inside every time I say it. So you know what? Don't judge me. I'm enjoying it. 102% push on Radiant over the past 7 days. Now, let's take a look at mining pool profitability on Ethereum Classic. Last 90 days, ZET in first, crazy pool in second, Ether mine in third. Last 60 days, crazy pool in first, Ether mine in second, 2 miners in third. Last 30 days, crazy pool in first, ZET in second, Ether mine in third. Last 21 days, ZET in first, crazy pool in second, Ether mine in third. Last 14 days, ZET in first, crazy pool in second, Ether mine in third. Last 7 days, ZET in first, crazy pool in second, flex pool in third. Last 3 days, ZET in first, crazy pool in second, crux pool in third. And for the last day, we had ZET in first, mining pool up in second, and crazy pool in third. ASIC miner profitability. In the first place, we have the Antminer L7, which has dropped below $15 a day, unfortunately, but still kind of killing it compared to everything else. You got the Antminer D7 at $11.16 a day on Dash in second place, and the iPolo V1 in third place at $10.71 a day on mining rig rentals for ETH hash. It says, I don't know exactly what that's mining. I don't believe it. So I'm going to say no on that. I'm thinking it is closer to the $3 a day, in my humble opinion. And I think the mining rig rentals thing is a little jacked up. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say really third place is probably going to be the IB Link on Kadena at $7.19 a day, or the KD6, at $5.91 a day. Still pretty bad margins if you had purchased that less than a year ago for $60,000. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast in cryptocurrency mining right now. Gold Shell HS3 kind of looking pretty not too bad at $5.53 a day on, of course, Handshake, because it's the only thing it can mine. And if we scroll down just a little bit more, we got the Antminer S19 Pro here. Still under, still under $3 a day. Technically, really kind of under $2 a day. If we're looking at taking mining rig rentals out of the equation here, which I think we're going to have to start doing. But, the margins on Bitcoin mining, still pretty rough. No surprise there. Now, Typically, I would do a Q&A over here today, but I am going back to Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going back to Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm excited. Yes, I would like super chats and to talk to you guys and answer questions, and I feel like we got a lot to cover as far as Ergo goes. Once again, I want to make it clear, like, for some reason, everybody's, you know, I don't know. Let's make this clear. We want Ergo to be successful. There is a clear problem that needs to be resolved, and it looks like the developers are proposing an EIP to resolve it, and this could be pushed out pretty far. The question will be posed is, does that EIP solve it or not? And you know, I don't have the answer to that either. I know that some people that have been doing the math say that it will not solve it, and then other people saying that it will. Basically, you have a reduction of difficulty adjustment by like 4 times, right? So there you go. As it sits, we know it don't work though right now. Daniel says you're going to get wrecked. Yeah, I'm going to get choked out a lot today. It's been a month. B. Nick says, ask Have a Tech thingy about going to a jiu-jitsu gym near me. Any tips for a beginner? Listen and do what you're told and acknowledge that you don't know shit and keep going. Really, it's all about continuing to go. And it's going to hurt more than you think. So just mentally be prepared for that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe, and notification bells down below. I have calls, one-on-one meetings, literally the rest of the day when I get back. So we won't have a stream over on Twitch until 6 p.m., maybe even 7 p.m., probably 7 p.m. because I'll be getting off calls. No videos today because it's all meetings. We have all meetings tomorrow as well. Some of those will be converted into videos. Some of them will not. I think I overbooked myself this week, so bear with me as we get through them.